Silgamo has about 5,000 students. So they study in 3 different shifts, morning and afternoons and evenings. And we have about 80 employees among teachers and administrative staff. Classes at Silgamo are not mandatory, so the students can enroll for courses there as extra activity programs. Okay, so let's go on. So this is my classroom. So as you can see, I have some technology there. So this is classroom I share with another co-worker. She works in the morning and I work in the afternoons and evenings there. And this is the context. I'm sorry I moved the picture and now it's just on the word project, storytelling project. So I worked with this project with an intermediate 2 group. The course book that we use there is Interchange 2, third edition, sorry. So the group is formed by 22 students. So classes meet once a week for a double class, 90 minutes each. So they have lots of time. So that's why everybody presented on the same day. It was an oral assessment day. So the objectives of the lesson. So students should be able to. So in this part of the unit, we have already finished. So I have already covered complex sentences with past continuous and simple and past tenses in general. Like, for example, I was living with my grandparents when I entered high school. And also we studied present perfect continuous. So this is number 2. So in the same unit we studied the use of adverbs, like surprisingly, coincidentally, etc. So with all this language, I asked them to write a story. They would tell a real story or imagine one. So they were asked to include grammar, the grammar and vocabulary we studied in the unit. So after that, I explained that they have to design a storybook. So they have to draw, illustrate their story. Then they have to tell the story to their classmates as our oral assessment. So in this lesson, my objective is also practice listening, because as they listen to their classmates, they have to pay attention to their stories and they have to answer 2 questions that the person who is telling the story is going to ask by the end of the presentation, just to check if they were really paying attention. And also we are going to vote for the best story. The procedures. So I always give them instructions about 3 or 2 weeks in advance. So they have plenty of time to prepare. Also, they have to write their stories. They have to hand in a first draft. So then I can correct and give them some feedback. After that, they have time to prepare their books. So they rewrite their stories and then they illustrate it. So when everything is ready, they can rehearse. So they have about 1 or 2 weeks for rehearsals. So on the day of the presentations, so they are instructed to tell the story in English. And also, I tell them that they can read, but I warn them they should read the less as possible. They can also use strategies for storytelling, like they can use puppets, they can use origami shapes, they can use a slide, they can prepare a slide presentation or something like that. And On the same day, they have to hand in the final draft, because this is also a written assessment. So I can evaluate both written and oral production. So during the presentations, as I told you before, they are required to listen carefully, because they are expected to vote for the best story, and there will be a brief quiz. Each one has to prepare 2 or 3 questions. So what is the name of the main character of my story? Or what is the story about? Something very simple like that. And finally, I had these 2 stories from 2 students of mine, Mariani. This is Freak Friday. It's a story about a girl going back from school who met a bunch of cats, and then she goes on telling the story. As you can see, there are some mistakes. Probably I didn't have enough time for correction. I don't remember exactly what happened, because it was 2 years ago, because she has some mistakes there. But the purpose is to have them corrected before the day. Probably I didn't have time for it. And another story, this is the Friday, is this one. One is a story that is The Strange Mind of Simon. So this is a very nice one, because she had artistic talent. You can say.
She drew the pictures?
Yeah. And the story is very nice too. Again, there are many mistakes, because I think I didn't review this text before, and I was kind of, I didn't want to write in red in her story, because it was really, nice. So later you can check if you want to read, because she talks about equality, freedom, different issues. So it's a very personal perspective of life. And it's really interesting, because she talks about a guy who sees things gray. Everything he sees is gray. So he can't see colors. And he collects gray things, and he has never left his house. So one day he decides to get out, and he realizes the world is not beautiful. So in the end of the story, he can understand that life can be full of colors. Depends on,
wow.
So beautiful.
on how you're looking at the color of ink. And there is a part of her story that she says, he was lost many times, and I could identify myself here just the way we were here. Like, some of them do that, but I warn them not to do so. So I tell them that it's easy to know when they do translation online, because the text gets really confusing. So at the time I instructed them, I told them that they had to use the vocabulary, grammar we had learned. So they shouldn't translate. So most of them didn't translate, but of course it sometimes happens. Yeah. But in this level, they have already taken 3 years of course, so they can write really well. Even though it's not so perfect, as you can see, but they are still in intermediate level. So I consider this is a very good production for the level.
I do something similar, but with the basic level, and they don't have necessarily to write the text. They can take from internet a short story or something like that, and they present in each class. You know, not everybody in the same class. So every class we have a story, vocabulary, and questions at the end. The person that took the text makes the questions, and it's really nice. And with my students, as it's basic, I let them read the text, so they can practice reading and listening and answering the questions. They don't have necessarily to write. Some of them like, and they try to do that, but it's really nice. They really enjoy it.
The nice thing that I think is that you can mix both the skills in one activity, so you can include everything: reading, listening, speaking, writing, and also extra things like drawing and finding the artist in you. Like you have to find a way to tell your story, so you're going to catch your friends' attention. So some of them made origami shapes to present some others brought puppets to tell the story, so it was really
Using
interesting.
pictures and movements also help the ones that are listening the story to understand.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yay!